Joining us now is Kenny Stein, Vice President of Policy at the Institute for Energy Research. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Spain seems to be ground zero for the cause of this huge blackout. And for more on that, here's Spain's Prime Minister.
As far as causes, what we are hearing from the Red Electrica technicians is that at 12:33 this morning, 15 gigawatts of generation was suddenly lost from the system, and that it was lost in just 5 seconds.
But that then begs the next question: what caused the sudden loss of 15 gigawatts? Any ideas?
Well, here's the problem. This could be a very simple issue, but once a cascade begins and all these power plants start tripping offline, once there's any kind of oscillation in the frequency of the grid, all these power plants will trip offline in order to protect themselves, to protect their electronics. So the whatever happened isn't necessarily a huge event, but if it is not arrested before everything starts to shut down, the grid can fail very quickly, and that's what happened in this case.
Yeah, and 15 gigawatts is about 60% of total electricity generation, and according to local media reports, the collapse triggered the disconnection of the Spanish electricity system from the European system, which is based on interconnection with France. So that's part of the fail-safe here, right? So one part goes down, it just takes itself offline. And then is that essentially what we're looking at here? It's just a backup fail-safe plan?
Right. Well, Europe-wide, there's been a great effort to increase interconnection between every country. And the idea being that if there's any issues within a certain country with any power plants going offline, that they can then import electricity from neighboring countries. But the problem is what seems to have happened here is whatever failure happened in Spain, it was such a significant frequency disruption that the interconnection with France was actually cut off. So even Spain's sort of backup to the backup, which was the rest of the European grid through France, was also cut off. So ultimately, there was no backup and everything shut down.
Well, and according to Red Electrica in Spain, they've activated the procedures planned for restoring power. In this phase of the work, the goal is to power the generating units so they can start up and spread power to the grid as well as other units. This is a black start, right? And it's been described by some experts as a nightmare. So why is this so difficult? Why it's a nightmare? What's the process here?
Right. It's an extremely difficult process. And there's a reason why when these sorts of issues are happening, normally rolling blackouts will be instituted in order to prevent this kind of full shutdown of the grid. Because when you try and restart everything, you have to go power plant by power plant. And you have to start with units that have diesel backup generators. And you have to start the diesel generators running to power that individual power plant. And once you get that power plant up to enough generation, then you can start connecting customers, you can start connecting the power plants to each other. But each step has to be done carefully and only step by step. So it takes many, many hours to do this, as you can imagine, over an entire country. Each individual plant has to be connected, and then customers can only be connected as just enough generation comes online, because at all times, the generation and consumption of electricity has to be perfectly balanced.
Well, I mean, we don't see a blackout like this very often in terms of scale, the number of people affected by all of it. So how vulnerable are power grids to this sort of failure? And has it been sort of a case of good fortune there hasn't been more mass power outages like this one?
Well, certainly it doesn't happen in modern Western developed countries. This is a type of thing you'll sometimes see in less developed countries with less developed power grids. But in a country like Spain, normally in the rest of Europe, the United States, there is enough backup capacity that's normally kept by the grid operators. They're watching very carefully for any deviations in frequency so that they can bring on more power to adjust or to shed load, as I was speaking earlier about with brownouts. So normally this is very carefully watched, and that's why it normally does not happen. In this case, we don't know obviously what exactly happened, but there is an open question about whether the makeup of the Spanish electricity grid, their power generation sources, particularly at the time of this outage, may have contributed to certainly making it become a countrywide failure instead of just confined to a particular region wherever this original issue happened.
Yeah, it just seems incredible that something like this can still happen, today with all the technology we're meant to have and how things are meant to work. Kenny, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.